This week is being recorded.
All right, welcome to our weekly New York Giants Preservation
Meeting.
Society meeting. Just some brief news. Next week will be no meeting. A lot of the people in here will be celebrating Yom Kippur, so for those who are celebrating, I hope you have an easy fast. The following week, we will have Mike Hauser. He's the great nephew of George Burns, very famous New York Giants baseball player from the early days with John McGraw. The following week, we were scheduled to have Josh Prager from the Echoing Green to celebrate Bobby Thompson's home run. That is now on hold. The reason being is Josh's book is coming out, and he's just very fearful. His book is about Wade and the famous court case, Roe and Wade.
Yeah, I know.
And he took 11 years to get the book done. It's done. I'll be sending out some links to it. Knowing him, it's probably going to be a New York Times bestseller. So I'm going to call him on the 24th, see if he can talk following week. And
yeah, I'll be right there.
If he can't, we will either have no meeting or we will do an impromptu meeting. Maybe we'll know where the Giants stand in the playoff hunt, because the season will be ending that Sunday. And I know a lot of you guys are excited. And if you want to talk about Giants baseball heading into the playoffs, we can do that. A couple of weeks ago, we had Mel Ott's daughter, Barbara Schneidow, and tonight again we are graced with baseball royalty. Tonight we have Linda Ruth Tosetti. She is the blood granddaughter of the great Bambino,
Yeah, look at the face.
the Sultan of Slot, whatever you want to call him. Possibly the greatest baseball player of all time. Linda is going to talk about her grandfather, and then she's going to spend, a while also talking about Babe's time playing in the Polo Grounds.
Well, a little bit, yeah.
Yep, and dealings with John McGraw and the Giants. So, Linda, it is a pleasure having you, and thank you for gracing us tonight with your presence. Linda,
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't even know where to start on my grandfather. Where should I start? I mean, I could sit here for 6 hours. Want me to start with the Polo Grounds? Well, in 1919, when he went to New York, of course, there was no stadium. So I think they were the Highlanders a couple of years before that.
Cortana.
You all right?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So he shows up, and my grandfather, right off the bat, I mean, coming out the gate, he was hitting these tremendous home runs, and it would have been the first time New York has kind of seen it. I mean, he was with Boston for a while, but when he got to New York, he took off like a comet. And yeah, McGraw wasn't too happy with him because, like I said, he was friends with Ty Cobb, and Babe and Ty did not get along at all because Ty was the scientific game, move man from base to base, small ball, I guess they call it. And Babe came with the home run right out the gate. I mean, he was hitting 500-foot home runs at St. Mary's.
Fox.
Nope.
Sleeping pool.
I apologize. Guys,
okay.
I hate to have to mute you. You got to know by now.
So anyway, in fact, I do have, Andy found one home run online today that it was it's in 1920 and in 21. And I have to get my glasses. It was against the Detroit Tigers. Ty Cobb, I guess, was in there. Ruth hit his 21st home run that sailed up 480 feet into the center field seats. Wow. The first time anyone had hit a ball that far in the Polo Grounds. It was his second home run that day and the fifth home run in 4 days. Babe held Ty Cobb to a 0-3 day, striking him out once. Was that
He
3?
walked him twice.
Yeah, he walked him twice. They swept the Tigers, and Babe had 7 home runs in just 3 games, a total of 8 hits in 12 at bats. So that's what happened. Babe literally exploded when he got there. And yeah, Ty Cobb McGraw couldn't get the Yankees out of Polo Grounds fast enough. So that's when they said, when it got to be really ridiculous and the Yankees were outdrawing so bad, they started building Yankee Stadium. And I think in 22 was the opening day.
1923.
1923? Really?
Yeah.
That long? Anyway, see, that's why I have my husband around. He keeps the numbers in his head. But yeah, so it's and Babe, people don't realize, but when Babe was on the field, if it sounds funny, but that was his relaxation. He was so, he was 6 at St. Mary's when they gave him a bat, and he played every day, rain or shine. And he was, like I said, he was hitting, exploding. They had to turn the field around at St. Mary's because he was breaking windows. So, he just, he had fun. It was fun for him. It wasn't work. It wasn't pressure. He just went and had fun. And like I said, he invented the home run. Someone came to me and said, the swing was all wrong on Babe's swing. He does everything wrong. So I said, what do you mean it was all wrong? I said, was there really a lot of home runs before he came? And he said, no. I said, so obviously you have it wrong because he's the one that is the blueprint writer of the whole, the home run. So yeah, he gets compared a lot. I just wish I could see him play today with the equipment and the balls and everything. And yes, he did hit, and he did stand in the plate for 95-mile-an-hour Walter Johnson's pitches.
Grover Cleveland Alexander.
And yeah, Grover Cleveland Alexander also. So yeah, so I don't know. I'm usually have people ask questions, so I'm more pointed.
No, I wanted you to just say about that. Now we're gonna ask questions. I'm gonna lead off. Do you consider yourself to be, the main relative and the
Oh yeah.
sort of the reservoir of everything Babe Ruth?
Yeah, when I found out when I was in 7th grade about my grandfather, I went to my mother and said, "You didn't tell me we were famous." And she said, "'Cause you're not." And thus started my lesson about Babe Ruth. And I just wanted to know about this grandfather I missed by 7 years and that was so famous. And so I've been studying him since then. I used my mother at the beginning. And then when she passed, and believe me, I read all the books. And the Big Bam, Mr. Rothschild, it's not a good book. It's just a rehashing of Creamer's book as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so I've been studying, like, it's over 50 years. I was thinking about it yesterday and I went, oh my God, I've been, even longer than that. It's got to be about more 55 years.
Do you consider it a labor of love or?
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't get old. I'm waiting. I thought, gee, what am I going to do after Babe Ruth? And then I said, Linda, you're 50 years old. What do you mean? What are you going to do after Babe Ruth? He's been my life. And you know what? I embrace it because he doesn't stop. Just not long ago, I was up last year. We were up at the Herkimer mines in Herkimer, New York. And I was Herkimer. Yeah. Herkimer or Herkimer?
Yeah, I think it's about 30 miles north of Cooperstown.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
yes. So I'm there, and this fellow that worked there come up and told the owner somebody wants to talk to Linda. So, and I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. He came all the way from Texas, and he was there, on vacation, and he said, I want to share a story with you. So I said, sure. I love collecting stories of my grandfather, especially when it's that close. So he said, my grandmother had my mother on a train. And so Ruth was on the train. He came by and he said, may I hold your baby? So she said, of course, Mr. Ruth. So he handed my mother to Babe, and Babe's cooing and playing with him. And And then she said, "Do you have children?" He goes, "Not yet," and handed it back to her. Now, the point of that story is just before, the dinner the night before, they came and asked me, "Was Babe a gentle man?" And I told him I supposed he was, but here's proof. He sent me somebody to tell him right to my face that, yeah, he was a gentle man. And that's been happening to me my whole life. If I've got a question, it's answered. So I must be doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? I can only take that as a confirmation.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask one last thing. Then we're gonna go to Jeff, Steve, and Dan Taylor. Linda, couple of things. In the Hall of Fame, they have a great, it's not a statue. What would you call it, Steve?
It's
In
a
the Hall of
carving.
Fame? A what?
It's a carving.
Yeah, a carving of him. I think that thing is great. There's one of Ted Williams also.
Right.
Yeah.
Same man did it.
That's the
Same man did it.
and on our frequent visits there, Steve, remember that guy used to dress up like Babe? He actually looked like.
Yep, the sanitation
just-
worker.
Yeah, I don't
he
know if you
just
ever
passed.
met him. He was quite
Oh,
a
yeah.
character.
I knew Buster. He just passed
Yeah, I think
He
you're
did.
right.
A couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago.
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but-
oh yeah, no, I met him. He even had the twinkle in my grandfather's eye and twinkle in his eyes like my grandfather. But no, yeah, I did. And the what were you talking about before that?
Carving.
Oh,
I feel.
yeah, the statue. Lamontagne. Armand Lamontagne carved that. And he did it out of wood that was all laminated. And he didn't use when you're looking at the flannel, he carved that flannel. You know what I mean? He didn't use any tricks. And he used old-fashioned tools to do it. And my mother, when they unveiled that, she gave him the ultimate compliment. She said, it looks like he's going to breathe. She
Yeah.
loved that statue. She
It's a
loved
great
that
one.
statue.
All right, thank you. Jeff Cohen, you're up.
Thanks. This is a great honor speaking to you, Linda.
Oh, how you do?
Okay, I was at an event a couple years ago, at a Sabre event, and there was an author who wrote about your grandfather, and he said that he might have lost so many home runs because they didn't have a fence and they couldn't do a foul pole. He
Right.
estimated it must have been another 50 or 60 home runs. Can you corroborate that?
Yeah,
107 altogether, actually.
107?
Yeah.
107, my husband says. Yes, I know that author. It's true, but if you take all considerations, like some of the doubles would have been in the park home runs, some of the in the park would have been doubles, and then the foul line call. If you go through all that rigmarole and do the math, that's how you come out with
You
what
have
you
one
come out
umpire.
with. And you only had one umpire. So
Right,
if it
wow.
looked like it was going to go, it went. You know what I mean?
It's not where the ball went out of the park, is where it landed.
Yeah, there you go. Can you hear
Oh,
him?
wow. Yeah, yep, that was,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's you only had
My
one umpire.
husband, Andy.
Hi, how you guys doing? You only had one umpire, and he had to visualize the whole field. And and if he saw the ball land in foul territory, even though it was fair and it curled around the foul pole, it was considered foul.
Hey, Andy,
Yes, sir.
why don't you get on another computer? You have the link.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm good.
Oh,
You
we
sure?
don't have another computer.
Nah.
This is it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll do this
There
so
you
you
go.
can see him.
Okay, now I'm good.
All right,
Thank
Dan
So
Taylor,
the-
you're up, and then Steve.
Well, a couple of different things. First, ironically, just this morning, I found myself doing some research on a 3-week stretch in 1927 that the Babe spent in Los Angeles filming a movie. And it was really interesting because there's some myth out there, and it may be true, that in a 1-hour stretch in an exhibition, he hit 125 balls out of the LA Wrigley Field. And it was really interesting because it said he woke up every morning, he brought a personal trainer with him from New York, and he woke up every morning and ran 5 miles.
That
Which-
was excuse me interrupting. That trainer was
Jack Dempsey.
Jack Dempsey's trainer. Al McGuffey.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My question, you've alluded to a couple of the books, and I'm curious, I read Jane Levy's book a year or two ago that came out, Big Fella, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, if there's one that you recommend more than others, and one that you'd advise us to steer away from.
The Big Bam would be one of the first ones. Creamers, it had good stats in it, but everything personal, it seemed like, why did anybody have to know that when he ate spinach, his piss was green? Stupid stuff they put in there. And Mom was concerned about that because kids are reading it, and that's where she comes from. Actually, you know what you want to read? when I finish my book. Because I'm scabs and all. It's the truth. You know.
Is it out or
so-
is it coming out soon?
No, I can't. I'm still working on it. I've been
Okay,
working on it for
keep us
2
posted.
years.
That's great.
But
Thank you.
COVID has helped that a great deal, by the way. I've come a long way on the book.
Great.
But yeah, but no, the book, you know what happens with the books? They don't tell the whole story. So when you take something and just put it out there without the story, it sounds like, oh my God, he what? No, that's that, you know, it's tell the whole story. Like what was it page 6? They had a out of the great the big bam. He was standing on a piano bench saying, anyone who doesn't want to get blanked, leave the room. Now that sounds pretty, you think, where did he do that? He was in a brothel when he did that. You see what I'm saying? Not that it's good to be in a brothel, but he was in there. So he was kidding with the girls.
Yeah.
And see, they don't tell the whole story, you know?
Thank you. Interesting.
But-
And thanks
and
for
if-
doing this. This is great.
Oh, no, I love, but if they tell the truth about Babe, it is a fairy tale because it's amazing. If they just tell what actually happened, you know? And Babe did like women, and there's, that's another
Tell
whole
the story
story.
about Japan, about the big women.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, he had to go to another, this is so ridiculous. He had to go to another town because the women in Japan were too small for him. Now, I don't want to tell you how small my grandmother was, okay?
She was tiny.
She was tiny. So things like that really don't, they just make them up. That's what bothers me the most. They
It's
just,
locker room talk.
yeah, locker room.
Thanks. Steve, you're up.
Yeah, Linda, I don't know if I assume you remember the first time we had a phone conversation with my group
Yep.
here in Arizona. One of the guys that was in attendance, his dad was the producer of the 5 Babe Ruth shorts from 1934. So he would have been on today. Larry Breslau, I think you may have connected. He had a stroke
they were
recently,
great.
and he's recovering from a stroke. But
Oh,
yeah, his
sorry to
dad,
hear
Lou, was also the home run derby producer. That's not my question is, and I don't know if I ever asked you this. Christy Walsh
Yep.
was the financial advisor, which was very rare in those days. And I
He
know
was-
it helped Grandpa make a lot more
Are
money.
you kidding?
And I don't know how many people that are on here have ever heard of Christy Walsh. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Christy Walsh was his manager. Babe was his first client.
Right.
And he wanted to get with my grandfather and manage him. My grandfather had gone through a whole bunch of people that were just full of it. So what happened was Babe had some liquor delivered. They say deli, but it was liquor. And he said, I'll deliver it to him. So he got into the apartment and he talked to Babe and he said, I'll make you $3,000 this month. You'll hire me as your manager. So Babe said, okay, go for it. He did. He became Babe's manager and he had Babe everywhere. He had him the biggest chicken, the biggest egg in Iowa, and he was great. And also, this is how smart that man was to save Babe from going through his money, because if you needed money, he'd say, sure, here, 500,000, here you go. So he's going through it. So what he did was he set up trust funds. Now, my mom's only a year old. He did 2 for my mother and then for us in the future, her children. And he was very smart that way. Yeah, he made my grandfather a lot of money. He was a good man. He was a good man.
Hey, just let the people know, and I'm not sure if that's going to come up, that you were not part of the Clare family.
Oh,
Clare,
please, no.
I know I don't want to bring that up. I know.
No, I don't mind. No, my mother she was illegitimate. Like I said, I tell the truth. She was illegitimate. He had an affair with my grandmother, who was Juanita.
Socialite from San Francisco.
Yeah, she was a socialite from San Francisco. And she was an illegitimate daughter of President Madero, the first elected president of Mexico. And she just wouldn't, when she got pregnant, Babe said, okay, I'll divorce Helen. She was married to Helen. He would divorce for a baby. And my grandmother said, I don't want to marry you, so you can do to me what you do to Helen? No way. And so he raised my mother because she really wasn't the motherly type. And so Babe raised my mom. He wanted her anyway, you know, which is a big kind of funny thing about that. But Babe didn't remember her birthday. Babe didn't even remember names, never mind dates. You know what I mean? So she belonged to Babe and Juanita. And also when she was born, she was only as big as his hand, and she had rickets. They didn't think she was going to live, but she did. She thrived. You know, so
You know,
yeah.
just let me throw this in there. It's a great question. If you know, her mother was supposedly adopted by Babe Ruth.
Well, yeah,
What happened
that was Claire's family saying that.
right. So if Babe Ruth was going to adopt anything, don't you think he would have adopted a little boy? Why would he adopt a little girl? Wouldn't he adopt a little boy if he was going to adopt somebody? I mean, it makes sense. We've talked about this with many people, and they said, you know something, that's a good point.
But my mom was so much like him anyway. She really was
Oh,
like her dad. It was amazing. She was an amazing lady. If she could do anything she wanted to do, just like Babe could do anything he wanted to do. She was a great mom. But yeah, no, Christy Walsh, when he became Babe's manager, that's when he got Garrick, he got Rickenbacker.
Garrett, right.
He started getting all these, you know, so it was very cool. He's a nice man. In fact, Mom was in touch with his son a little bit when she was alive, you know.
Okay,
I have
thank you.
I have the only picture of him eating a hot dog. Seriously, there's no pictures. Look, you won't find any pictures of him eating a hot dog. I got one.
Tom McLaughlin, nice to see you again. You're up.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Linda. Just a question. The movie The Natural with the Robert Redford character, it supposedly was based on something that may have happened to Babe Ruth in terms of the shooting on the train. Do you have any info on that, if that's an actual story or if that's just Hollywood poetic license?
Yeah, poetic license. He never had a gun or a shooting. What did happen on the train, and like I said, I tell the truth. You know, there was a press car just for Babe. And there were 29 papers just for Babe. So it's a normal traveling trip. Babe had his own car in the back because Claire wanted to go with him. Well, the door swung open. There goes my grandfather butt naked through the press car. And here comes Claire with a knife saying, I'm going to kill you. And one press guy said to the other, boy, it's a good thing I didn't see what I just saw. So that's the only train story I know.
Linda, I know you were 30 years ago, you were, probably 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe 10 years old. I'm trying to give you a nice.
I'm 66, guys. I'm proud of it. I earned every year.
Were you or your mother? I don't know when your mother passed. Were you?
89.
Okay, so
89.
she would have passed. Did they contact you at all about the Goodman movie?
You know, I heard about it coming. I got the numbers. So I tried calling. And I got this Goodman was very nice. And I think he did a good job considering the writing and what he had to work with. It's a pretty good movie. You know, when Babe walks in the room, he didn't say, hey, everybody. They said, oh, Babe's here. You know, he really portrayed him. The thing of being on the field was a little, he never came drunk. He never came drunk to a game ever. It was his job. Gary, would you come drunk to your job?
Get fired.
Yeah. So Babe didn't come drunk everywhere because baseball was super important above anything. You know, amen. That was his church. So, but the movie I saw, this guy called me. He didn't give me his name. He said, you Linda Tosetti? I said, yeah. He says, what can you possibly tell me about your grandfather that I don't know? I said, well, if you give me a chance, I'll tell you plenty. I'll tell you how he laughed. I can even tell you how he walked. I said, I could tell you a lot of things. And he just said, I don't need it, and hung up. So I'm only assuming that must have been the director. I don't know. He didn't give a name. But yeah, no, I didn't have any say on that. And my mother was already died. So that's why they had her sticking out her tongue. By the way, that was a trait of my mother. when she wanted to be smart, she'd go, you know, and she did that even, in fact, before she died, she
Yep.
stuck her tongue out at me. And so somebody knew something because that was my mom. So, and she was the little Dorothy on the train.
Oh.
One last thing about movies. Did your mother mention at all about your grandfather's role in Pride of the Yankees?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, Lou, that would have been very important to him too, because Lou passing just ripped my grandfather apart. My mother said he stood over Lou and said, "Why you? I'm the one that lived, you know, the life I lived." He was in bed by 10 o'clock. Lou was a straight as an arrow, eating, sleeping, everything. And I should be in that coffin, not you. And it really broke him up. It really did. So I know he wanted to be in that movie. And you know where they're doing the hats? My mother told me this. You know where they have the hats, the straw hats?
Oh, yeah.
The new guy comes in. Well, they didn't bite him. In the movie, they bit him because there was nobody strong enough for my grandfather to put his hand through the top. They'd take your straw hat and say, "Oh, nice hat," bam, and they'd knock the lid off it and they hand it back to you. But none of the guys could hit the hat. So that's why they did the biting. They didn't bite the hats. They just knocked the tops off. And she told me those kind of things, you know, about the movie. But
Nice.
she actually, that's the first time I heard my grandfather speak, believe it or not, was in that movie. And I said, "Oh my God, his voice is higher than I thought it would be," you know? But yeah, that was a good movie.
Great. Harvey, you're up.
Linda, have today's Yankees, or not necessarily you're shaking your head.
I know what you're going to ask, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think I know why. I think I know the answer, but have they reached out to you in any manner, shape, or form?
No, the only thing I can tell you is, you know, the Plaza, Babe Ruth Plaza.
Yeah.
Oh, get that off. That's me or you?
No,
Oh, that's you. Get the phone, Andy. Anyway,
Plaza.
Oh, the Plaza.
Monument.
I heard it was going to be called Lou Gehrig Plaza. So if you look at that time, I was very verbal in the post. And I said, what are they going to do for my grandfather? They ripped down his house, which I don't see why they couldn't take Yankee Stadium off. That would have created jobs. Now it's just a garbage pit. And I wanted to keep it up and have a museum and have people work and kids could play on the field where all these, and when you walk in that stadium, the hair used to stand up on your neck. I don't know how many fans told me that. So I said it should stay. But of course, the Yankees didn't even listen to me. I went all the way to Washington to try and save that. But the money was went too far up. I couldn't. I wanted to have it made
Yeah.
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 I know, whatever they call them. And so they did do Babe Ruth Plaza. And they also, by the way, the new stadium is built on top of Babe's Memorial Park
McCombs Park.
at McCombs Park. They put right on his memorial field. So I wanted to know what part he was going to play in this stadium, you know? And so next thing I know, they're calling it Babe Ruth Plaza. So that's all, you know, they don't call me to do things. I'm very good friends with the guy who runs the museum. He's a terrific guy.
Brian Richards.
Yeah, Brian Richards. And so, yeah, no, believe it or not, guys, I hate to say this because I know you're New York guys, but the team to embrace us, believe it or not, was Red Sox.
Oh, yeah.
They've celebrated every single one of his anniversaries. I threw more balls out at the Red Sox than I think anybody.
Yeah.
Linda,
No.
what number did he wear on the Red Sox?
None. There was no
No
number.
number.
Okay.
They came out in 27,
29.
29.
All right.
Yeah, and Babe was 30.
Jack Graney of the Cleveland Indians was the first player to wear a number.
Really? I didn't know that.
Cleveland
All right.
Indians.
We're gonna go to Steve, then Jay,
Nice
then
cigar.
Ed,
What's he smoking there?
then Dave, then Paul.
Oh, he's smoking a Cohiba.
Jay, go
I don't
ahead.
know, I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, yeah,
Linda,
Buster
this
the
is,
Babe.
right?
Yeah, I see.
What was his name?
Buster the Babe.
Buster Gardner was his real name.
Okay, this is in Cooperstown. This is, I guess, 2011, I think. You
Yeah.
go around the town and just take photos. Thank you.
Yeah, he was
Thank you,
great.
Gary.
You're
He
welcome.
was great for promoting Babe. He was. The only thing is, he used to go in the bars and drink, and that bothered me because he'd be drunk, dressed like my grandfather. But he was a sweetheart. He had a great heart. He was good.
All right, let's go to Jay and then Ed, then Paul.
And put me
Yeah,
on.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, I had heard about a falling out that Babe had with Lou Gehrig kind of towards the end of his career, and it had something to do with the wives not speaking to one another. I mean, could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. The fallout was really among the women. Okay. My mother used to spend summers because Claire was, I read Mommy Dearest and I said, Mom, this couldn't have happened. She said, yeah, it happened. I lived with it. So she was pretty much Mommy Dearest with Claire. So to get my mother out of the fray, he would send her to Lou Gehrig's parents' farm. And she spent the whole summer with the Ma and Pa Gehrig, and she loved it and the animals, and she was very happy. But her clothes were always ragamuffin. So they got her new clothes. And when Claire came to get my mother, take her home, she said, you know, Claire, you should dress Dorothy as well as you dress your daughter, Julia. Because Julia's the adopted daughter, actually. And why don't you dress her as good? And of course, you didn't say that to Claire. So Claire went at it. Said to Babe, do you know what she said to me? Ba, 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 ba. So my grandfather didn't get upset. He just went to Lou and said, Lou, can you tell your mother just to keep that stuff down? Because it's driving Claire crazy. It's making me miserable. He didn't say, tell your mother to shut up. Or he just said, can she kind of not do that? Well, Lou took affront to it. And then the rigmarole started. But you know what? My grandfather tried to make up with Lou several times, even the trip to Japan on the boat. Eleanor was talking to Babe and Claire, but Lou just refused to talk to my grandfather. And that meeting on that day really was a makeup day for them, because after that, my grandfather would spend time with Lou almost every day at his apartment when he was sick. My grandfather would go.
Could you give us a time frame as to like when this started and when it ended?
Gosh, numbers in my head.
Yeah.
It would have been, let's see, when did Lou finally retire? That one was
39 was his last year.
Babe
Yeah,
retired
so-
in 34.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking it had to be, it was before 34. So, and it was in Japan, which was
32.
they weren't talking. So it had to happen 30, 31 that they had the falling out. And my mother would have been young enough to have gone.
So when Babe left the Yankees after the 34 season,
Yeah.
They were still not talking at that point?
No.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
actually, Lou, well, you know what? Some of the quotes they give, just like Babe, don't necessarily believe them unless I hear them out of Lou's mouth. But that's impossible. But they said, good. They said, well, what do you think of Babe retiring? He goes, well, good. Now I got a chance. Because they were always neck and neck, and Babe would always win on the home runs. Just, And so I think Lou breathed a sigh of relief that, okay, now he could play his game. But unfortunately, up comes Joe DiMaggio. So it's kind of karma. And he really never did. And he was pretty strict German. They had him on a parole. They had him on the parole board in New York.
Yeah.
And he never gave anybody parole. He ratted out his teammates because they used to play spring training in, what was that park then? Water park?
You're talking about
Yeah.
in Florida?
Stingle. Yeah, it's called
Yeah.
Stingle Park now. And he used to play with alligators in right field.
Crescent Lake.
Crescent Lake, that's what it was. And there was wild, and they have babies, and Babe would get the babies and pass them out. I mean, he was playing with, they didn't have a fence. So what happened was when Lou had to go out there, he didn't want it like the alligators. So what he did was he had him shot. And, oh no, the players had him shot.
Yeah.
Lou didn't. And Lou reported him to the ASPCA at the time, or whatever animal group they had. So he kind of ratted out his friends, which didn't make him very popular. But he was he had his rules. He was strict. He was in bed by 10, no matter what. He was in bed
Milk
by
and
10.
cookies.
Milk and cookies, yeah.
Thanks, Jay. We'll go to Ed Freer and then Paul. Ed?
Yes, thank you very much, Linda. You really do seem like a real person too.
Oh, my mother, no other choice with the mother I had. You're not famous. So you gotta figure out how to give back. That was my
My father used to tell me about taking his younger brother to Yankee Stadium, and was kind enough to see Babe hit 2 home runs that day. And
Oh, I wish I could go back. It had to be electrifying.
my question is, the person from that era that I did know, and most of us here knew, was Casey Stengel, who you just alluded to the field.
Oh, yeah.
Have a Casey Stengel story.
Oh, he was a character. The one I have is Tom, what was his name? Tom, the umpire.
Tom Gorman.
Tom Gorman. That's the story I have. And he actually came to this house and told it. Him and Stingle had a rough time. So
He was umpiring first base.
yeah. And so this run comes sliding in, and it broke Tom Gorman's leg. So he's in pain, and Stingle's saying, was he safe? He was a home umpire. Was he safe? So Tom says, who's asking? He said, Stengel. He goes, he was out.
He said he never saw the play.
He didn't
said
see
the
the
guy
play.
slid into him. He broke his leg. He's sitting there withering in pain. He said, I never saw it happen. If anybody else asked me, I probably would have said he was safe. Because it was Stingle, he was out.
Yeah. But my grandfather got along with everybody, There's a lot of people jealous and yelled things at him, and it went off like a duck to water. He loved baseball too much to be influenced about what people said or yelled or. When he was young, though, he did chase a fan into the stands, but he was young. He grew up. He's playing baseball when he was 19. He actually grew up in ball. That's a hard place to grow up,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Paul,
welcome.
go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here tonight. My question really is about Babe as a pitcher. We know his exploits with the Red Sox. How long did it take the Yankees to basically rely more on his bat than on his pitching skills?
Well,
He was 5-0.
can I answer?
Yeah. I don't know if you knew.
I did. Actually, he pitched 5 times for the Yankees, and but I think it was more an exhibition in the game, but a thing he'd come out and do. But when he was at Boston, what happened was the last 2 years he was in St. Mary's, they centered brother Matthias, centered on his pitching, because he would leave St. Mary's and pitch for the different industrial leagues. In fact, you'll hear that Babe's name was Reinhardt, and because he had to change his name because they didn't know, so nobody would guess he was from St. Mary's. So that's why people say, oh, he changed his name all the time. Anyway, so his most loved record, and they asked him just before he died what his favorite record was. It was when he pitched 29 3/4 consecutive scoreless innings in World Series play.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was proudest of that. And he said he loved the mound. You can see on my letterhead, I have a quote that says, he loved the mound. It was home to him. And he liked pitching better than hitting home runs, actually, believe it or not. He loved pitching the most.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
Dave
You're welcome.
Ledman. Dave stepped away. Andy Baumgartner. Andy
You
and then
there,
John
Andy?
McLaughlin. Go ahead, Andy. Andy, you got to take your mic off.
Can do it.
There you go.
First
you
of
go.
all,
Hi, Andy.
Gary, Linda, this is incredible.
Oh, I'm
I'll
glad
try
you
to
enjoyed
be
it.
brief. Two, just about the baseball. The pitching, arguably, he did more, he was such a great pitcher. And it's
Yes.
unprecedented in any sport. Chuck Bednarik a little, Michael Jordan could play defense, obviously. Nothing like Babe Ruth. One of the greatest pitchers ever, and obviously one of the greatest hitters. But here's my story. I once
Okay.
met Carroll O'Connor, a very nice man.
Is that the Hollywood?
With Archie Bunker and
Oh, I wrote to
in the
him.
heat of the night.
Nice
Loved
man.
the Yankees, loved your grandfather.
Yes.
I
he did.
said to him, All in the Family, as far as groundbreaking, because let's face it, before we never even heard a toilet get flushed on TV.
Oh, no, that was a great show.
And all they did was like the Babe, and I think I forget the year, when Babe hit either 54 or 59. And Mr. O'Connor said, oh, you mean 1927 when he hit 60? And I said, no, because Lou hit 47. Didn't he out homer the whole American League one year or close to it?
Yeah.
Oh, that was when he had 20 runs in 1 year when he first came out, and one team. Oh, it's 40.
1920, I believe.
Yeah, and one team only had 11 collectively for the year.
It's just
No, the whole league
and
had.
the runs scored one year, just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there's
they would move man to man.
It
You
was
know,
small ball.
Small ball. Ty Cobb's claim to fame was he'd do a signal, and he says because there's only one umpire, he would pull shenanigans between. He'd run and then come back and run again, and the umpires. The guy that was on second missed third and came all the way to home, and they got the run because the umpire didn't see him not touch the base. So that's what I mean. They moved a man to man. And it's interesting. That's an interesting game. In fact, there's a book I read. What is it? A Glory of Their Days.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just-
wow.
It's a great
That's
book.
a great book.
I laughed. Some of the stuff they pulled. They pulled people off the road to play ball. It's just, it was
That's
a
the
great.
glory of their times.
Time.
Oh, thank you.
Larry
Glory. I always
Ritter.
get
Glory
that
of
mixed up
Time.
times a day. Yeah, I read it twice. I loved it so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Perry and then John.
Oh, thank you. Linda,
Yeah, hi.
who is that? Do you
Oh,
recognize?
that's the adopted daughter, Julia.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just completely fascinated by these family dynamics with
Oh.
you being the illegitimate
Grandmother. My mother was illegitimate.
Okay. So in your interactions with other members of the Ruth family, are you close to any of them or no? Are
They
you?
called my mother adopted all the life, and Julia knew the truth, and she never once contradicted it.
So they treated your mother as kind of an outcast?
Oh yeah, she stayed in the helps part of the. It's like a Cinderella story. She stayed with the help in that part of the house, but but the reason why was she would not share a room with Julia.
Uh-huh. And would that translate to you and your relationship with?
Oh, sure. They used to call my mother a gutter snipe. That's the
Oh my
worst you could call
gosh.
somebody.
Oh,
And Julia
wow.
would chime in. So mom never told Babe because he knew it probably, but she always wanted her time with her father because it was so little to be fun. So she never complained to Babe how they were treating her.
Oh.
And she kind of did passive aggressive stuff, but we tried writing to every state union here, trying to find her birth certificate to find out who her mother was. Because Babe, my mother finally got tired of it and said, Claire called gutter snipe right in front of Babe. So mom ran to her room and Babe came in and she said, well, do I belong to you or not? And he says, don't let anybody tell you you're not my blood. You are. So that kind of sustained my mom through all this nonsense because she knew where she came from. But he couldn't, he said, I promised your mother I wouldn't tell who she was. That's the way. And Juanita didn't want my mother to know. She wasn't mother material. That's all I can tell you. And
Have you ever done a genealogical search for any, relatives you may have out there
No,
that you
yeah.
don't know about?
no,
I'm
no,
sure
I-
there sounds like there might be a few.
No, I did that thing with the saliva. That's a lot of bunk.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they didn't have me. I'm half Italian. They didn't have my Italian and on the docs, It's I think they just hand out what they want to hand out. And so I've never done
Okay.
it. No, because I know, look at this face. Of course, I'm older. When I was younger, Babe never made it to 66, so we don't know how we would have looked. But when I came out, I didn't know about my face. My mother didn't say you look like him. She didn't do any of that. But I did when I first started doing this, there was a station in what was it? Oh, way up in Vermont.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, folks, I see it too. She looks just like her grandfather." So I looked at my sister and I said, "What?" And so everybody says it. In fact, in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, the town kind of adopted us. They said you can put 20 family members up, and we know which one's Babe Ruth.
Lewisburg? You said
Yeah.
Lewis?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Lewisburg.
where Christy Mathewson is buried,
Right.
Yeah, well, I know
in the
woman-
Lewisburg Cemetery.
Well, I
Huh.
know I became friends with the woman that was like Jane's adopted granddaughter, not kind of a
Is that
granddaughter.
Betty?
Yes,
Cook.
Betty Cook.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we
Yeah.
really do have to talk.
Yeah, I love Betty.
We're very
Yeah,
close
thanks
with
so
Betty.
much.
In fact, we just had to cancel an event for Christy. She did a whole program on Christy, and at the end she says, "And then with the crack of his back came Babe Ruth." So I support her because she wrote all of it, and they were going to do it for the Daughters of the American Revolution. And what happened was the COVID, everything was canceled, which she did so much work on it, But 92, she's got to be careful,
Yeah, wow. Okay,
But
great.
yeah,
Thank you
no,
so much.
Christy, he was another gentleman. I've learned a lot
Yeah.
about Christy from, he was quite the man. It's a shame with the mustard gas.
Yeah.
I want to know how come he died and Ty Cobb survived. I can't figure it out. Not that I wish Ty Cobb anything, but he just the good guy and the bad guy, But anyway, so yeah, my grandfather, like I said, he told my mom she belonged to him. And then if you read everything and put all the pieces together, all of it makes sense. And there's a key thing in my book that will put it all together. I just can't tell you guys now because I don't want to ruin the suspense. But there's a reason why. He didn't want to marry Claire, but there's a reason why he had to.
Ah.
That's all I got to say. Yeah. Oh, he thought he had to.
John, go ahead. Andy, did you have another question after?
Andy?
Should I go?
No, John,
Gary, or?
John, you go.
Okay. Linda, just a quick story I forgot to say before, and then a two-part question. My grandfather was from Ireland and didn't know anything about baseball, but when he was in New York, his friends told him he had to go to Yankee Stadium. He had to watch Babe Ruth play. Again, he didn't know what he was watching, but he went, and Babe Ruth struck out 3 times in the game.
Oh,
So-
no.
No home runs, just
Babe,
that was it. But
Babe.
so-
Well, you should have told him he had to impress the guy. He would have said, okay.
I'm sure he
I'll do
would have.
it. No,
I'm sure he
did
would
that-
have.
He did that with Ford Frick's father.
Yeah.
He said, I got to catch a train. Can you hurry up and hit a home run so I can make it? Babe went out. I said, well, you should have told me, Pop. And poof, it was gone.
That's great. And then the question is, what did your grandfather think about the Black Sox scandal? And was he aware of any gambling on his own team?
Yeah, no. Are you kidding me? After the Black Sox scandal, don't forget, that's my grandfather's church. You know what I mean? He tried his damnedest to excel. And if it wasn't for my grandfather because I asked Bob Feller that, is it true it would have been the end of baseball? And he said, Linda, with the Black Sox scandal and your grandfather coming up, if he didn't come up, it could have been a very different game if there was a baseball at all. Because people, they dressed their best to go to these games. So they were really disillusioned with the Black Sox scandal. And so they said, if my grandfather went from franchise to franchise, just bringing all those fans back with his home runs. And Feller said if he didn't do that, there wouldn't be any baseball, he thought. So, yeah, he was really upset about that. And
Linda,
by the way, oh, go ahead.
Linda, recently, many of our members went on a tour of the Polo Ground area, and we came across where Willie Mays stayed, his apartment.
Yeah.
And they talked about how he would, play stickball with the kids, buy the kids ice cream. And all we've ever seen is how much Babe loved the kids. Is this
Yep.
definitive?
That's true. Yeah, he used to go. My grandfather. Yep, my grandfather didn't sleep much. He'd go on 2 hours a day. He was ADHD, and so he'd get to the ballpark really early, and he'd sit with the vendors. Help the vendors fill the popcorn bags and everything. And he would tell the kids, "This is great. You're having fun, but stay in school." You know what I mean? This is not the end all. And he would kind of talk to him like that. And you talk about buying things for kids. Wow, he did. I don't even know where to start. He did so much. My mother used to be the one when he would stockpile bats and balls when he had the farm. And my mother was the one to make sure it was dry and wrap the ball up and put it back in the box. He would stock these things like crazy for the kids. He in Columbus, he would buy a car. He would go to the toy store, fill the back of the car with toys, and then go to an orphanage and give the nuns the keys, and the kids got the toys. And he did this every year. So it's not a publicity thing. My grandfather could be himself with the kids, and he'd go to the hospitals. All he had to do, imagine, the hoop, just what they felt. He put his head in the door. Well, kids that couldn't walk ran. Kids that couldn't sit up sat up just from pure adrenaline. How cool was that to see? And it must have made my grandfather feel so good. The adults were the adults. They did what they did, but the kids were his joy. They were, even before he died, he saw kids. So that's true. That's very true.
I got one other thing to ask you. I don't know, when I was a younger kid, occasionally I would watch the Yankees, couldn't watch the Giants here. And during a rain out, a lot of times they had this show called Biography by Mike Wallace.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And there was a great one on your grandfather. And there were two images that stayed with me that really bothered me. One was, I guess, his last appearance at Yankee Stadium in uniform, where he was just a frail man. And I remember the facade in the background. And the other one was, he must have been dying very shortly after. He could barely talk, and he said something about, I come here, he couldn't even talk, but he said something about the fans. And that stuck with me.
Well, Babe Ruth Day is when his hair was white and he had the coat on.
Right.
That was Babe Ruth Day. That came first, believe it or not.
Really?
The anniversary, 25th anniversary of the stadium, he had been on a series. They asked him if he would try chemotherapy. And he said, well, the termites got me anyway. If it'll help you, do whatever you got to do. He actually had no upper palate. He existed on beer and chopped meat. And so at the what was I going to talk? I was at the
ceremony.
Yeah, at the ceremony, that's where his voice was croaking. But his hair came back, because I asked my mother. I looked at the picture and you can see some of him in the coffin. I said, Mom, did he dye his hair? And she said, no, he was on 3 months of theropodin. And it actually did him well for 3 months. And of course, then it came back and it took him. But all his hair came back and everything. So that's why you see dark hair.
So that pose of him at Yankee Stadium in uniform is what you're saying?
Yes, that was after
Wow.
That was after. And he died, that was what? He died in August. He only had like 3 months to live
Deborah's
after
leaning
that.
on the bat.
Yeah, that used to make my mom cry, by the way.
That game was against the Cleveland Indians that day.
Yeah.
And when he was walking out, he was kind of feeble. And you notice how he's leaning on a bat in that picture?
Yeah.
You know whose bat that was?
Bob Feller.
Yep.
Yep, there you
Got
go.
it. You got
Steve.
it.
There
He
you go.
stole the bat. They
Yeah.
stole the bat.
Yep.
Well, no, he gave it back. He got,
No,
well, he had
no,
to trace
somebody,
it down. Somebody
the
took it.
story has it that somebody, the bat was signed, put that in the bat rack. When the game was over, fella couldn't find the bat.
That's
Somebody removed it. 40 years later, Bob Feller was supposedly at some kind of a memorabilia show and bought the bat for thousands of dollars because he
Yeah.
wanted it. Whether
It's
all of that is, but it's a Bob Feller thing. Hey, babe, I think you could use this.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was, yeah, it was sad. It used to make my mother cry because they show that all the time. And they said there's so many better things they could, why that, So I kind of give that the treatment in my book that it deserves, that people don't know about. But yeah, he was some guy. And do you know that last year he was alive? He went to 17 different events, flying and everything. He had a nurse with him for the, what's that?
Knights of Columbus.
No, it wasn't Knights
No.
of Columbus. Oh God, my brain. Anyway, it was for
Charity.
American something.
American Legion?
Yes, American Legion.
There you go.
American Legion.
And they said, "Why are you putting yourself through this, babe?" He says, "Because I want to reach as many children as I can while I'm on this earth," and that's why he did it.
Andy, go
Well,
ahead.
Okay,
Hi,
sorry about
Gary, you putting me online?
You're on next, Frank. Andy, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, sorry about before. I
Oh,
just
that's
wanted
okay.
to tell Linda, a friend of mine read this incredible book about Connie Mack. And Connie Mack adored your grandfather and in fact visited him. I guess they were in town to play the Yankees not long before he died.
He had Babe picked to take his place
Oh, and that was
with the
Babe's
Athletics, and he
team.
came in the
Oh.
paper and said, "I'm picking Babe Ruth," because when they were in Japan, he said, "Babe, I want to see what you really got. I want you to manage these 18 games." And Babe said, "Okay, I'm all for that." And so Connie, he did perfect. The guys, my grandfather was such a good guy that the players would play their hearts out for him. You know what I mean? He would have been honestly, baseball did a disservice because he would have been a tremendous manager. There wasn't anything at the game that he didn't know. And he was very likable and the guys would have listened to him and he had the respect. Well, what happened was he had an enemy and it was the commissioner, Landis. Landis never liked the idea Babe was so popular. And Babe pretty much said, when he went, he would do he used to love to barnstorm because he met the people and he'd take baseball into like North Dakota and Wyoming. And, he'd take baseball where nobody could see baseball. And Landis didn't like it. He'd say, "You can't do that. Some stupid rule that they made up." And it was all BS. And Babe said, "I'm sorry, but this is my job. I'm going to do it." And Landis never, he had him sit out 22 games. And he said, because she said, "You can't fire me," to Landis. Landis said, "No, but I can fire your friends." And so Bob Musial had to sit out the 22 games with him because he was with him on the barnstorming. So he didn't stop. He just didn't take the players anymore. He just went himself. But yeah, Landis did everything he could do to put roadblocks in Babe's way. And when Connie came out and said he's going to be, after 40 years with the Athletics, he was going to retire. And Landis said, "You're not doing that, Connie." And so he wouldn't allow it. He's the commissioner. He wouldn't allow it. So that's what held up my grandfather. And he never got what he really wanted to be manager. It was because of that darn commissioner. I have stronger, but I'm on Zoom. I can't use the word. But yeah, that's
All right.
because that.
Thanks,
again.
Frank, and then Renee.
Linda,
Hi, Frank.
hi, how are you?
Good.
Concerning the surname Ruth, I have never heard of anyone outside of the Babe with that name. Do you know anyone related or unrelated named Ruth? And what was the national origin of the name?
Well, Babe was pure German, kind of Prussian German, mountain German.
Yes.
And some of these people that say, oh, I hit that all the time. In fact, I just got done with a guy in Cooperstown that was going around telling everybody he was related. There is a Dutch German Ruth line. And then my grandfather is straight from Germany, Prussian. And both sides, his mother and his father were German. And he spoke German. And of course, when Margera cooked for him, she cooked delicious meals for Babe in German. And so he's he's from the actual mountains. In fact, they keep saying Babe's black because of his nose. Well, I was signing pictures for the Wayfarers Inn in Sudbury, and this waitress came up and said, "Wow, now there's a proper German nose." So I went, "Really?" She said, "Yeah," and she said, I can't pronounce it in German, but it's called an umbrella nose because the raindrops never hit his top lip. So there you go. That's a German nose, you know. So yeah, he's straight. He would be second generation German.
And you've never heard of any other Ruths?
No, just yeah. Oh yeah, people come out. There's a paper guy in Florida that his name is Ruth. You see a lot of Ruths, but they're not. Let's put it this way: all of our Ruths are accounted for. So you know what I mean. That's the judge. Probably if they go down their line, they're going to find it's a different line of Ruths.
Thank you.
You're
All right,
welcome, Frank.
We're going to go to Renee, then Dan Levitt, and then Jay. Renee, you're up.
How you doing, Linda?
Hi.
My question is, do you have any stories of Babe during his induction ceremony, the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I have a Ty Cobb story that has to do with my grandfather. You must have heard it. Have you heard it?
No, be my
No?
guest. No, I have not.
What happened was Ty Cobb was late. So they didn't wait for him. This has come straight from his son, Jimmy Cobb. So they didn't wait for him. So they went on with the ceremony and the picture, because there's two pictures of the induction guys, one with Cobb and one without Cobb. And all he did was he got up and he said, "Well, if my name was Ruth, you would have waited for me," you know. But no, but my grandfather, that was a party for him. He was in the streets and he was fans. If you see my grandfather, all you see his head. Fans are always around him. He was most comfortable. Now, this is difference, and I'm not saying it's bad, but the difference in the personalities, Lou would avoid that. My grandfather would jump right in it. In fact, in Pennsylvania, he was doing an exhibition game and he hit a home run and they knew it was the end. Everybody crowded on the field, kids mostly. What happened was he saw this little 4-year-old go down and not come up. So Babe dives down, comes up with the 4-year-old in his arms. That's how the crowds used to just, and he loved it. He had a ball. Mom said that was he'd laugh and have fun and play with them. And he just loved kids. He should have had a bunch, but I don't think Juanita was in for that.
Thank you.
All right,
You're
Dan,
welcome.
Jay, and then Dave, and then we'll see what else is going on.
Well, thank you. This has been terrific. I'm curious stories about his relationship with Jacob Rupert. It sounds like they knew each other and were actually fairly close in some ways.
They were, but really, they said at the end of his career, which is awful. They said to the baseball world, anybody can have him for $1. Yeah. And that was really sad. In fact, when Rupert was dying and Babe went to visit him, he used to call him Root. He apologized to Rupert, apologized to Babe. I think they really did have a good relationship, you know, and that was not a nice way to end it, you know. And my grandfather, that's why my grandfather was so strong. There's Rupert, and who's the other guy that the Braves? Oh, I can't
Hudson.
Huh?
Hudson.
No, it wasn't Hudson. It's somebody else. But King somebody. Anyway, they're standing. And the guy that's taking Babe handed $1 to Rupert, and there's my grandfather smiling in back of them both. And I'm thinking, how mortified must he have been? But knowing Babe, he wasn't. Yeah, no, he wasn't.
Right.
But they had a good relationship. My grandfather really did respect him. He gave him a great life.
Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that you were saying that Babe Ruth and Landis did not get along too well, and I also know that Landis, as long as he was going to be commissioner, there were not going to be any blacks playing in the big leagues. And I know that Babe Ruth did a lot of barnstorming, and I believe he had said that these guys are as good as anybody else that could play. Did he do anything behind the scenes?
Oh, sure.
To try to break the color barrier.
Are you kidding? His first barnstorming in was it 1918? He picked a black out of New Haven here, a black team called the what were they called?
Cubans?
Yeah, the Cubans, but they were all black. Babe loved the Negro Leagues, and I'm gonna tell you why. That's another thing I'm proud of. My grandfather always stood up for what he believed in. They were coming up with all the pitches that you were seeing, all the different ones. They were coming out of the black leagues. So the black leagues challenged my grandfather. And you'd get him once, but you wouldn't get him twice, because don't forget, he's got the eye of a pitcher. So you get him once, but not twice. And he loved to play with him. He'd go out and break bread with him. In fact, my husband talked to Monty Irvin, and I'll have Andy tell you, because it would be straight mouth. Tell him what he said about the
Monty. We were having dinner with Monty, and I asked him, about barnstorming, and he said, we played 55 games in our World Series, and then it was over. He said, I got paid $1 a day. Okay, he said that $1 a day bought me a steak, 2 martinis, and a matinee if I had time to go to it. But anyways, barnstorming with Ruth, he said I made $1,500 a month, and if the gate wasn't met, Babe made sure it got met. He said, I made more money barnstorming with Ruth than I made playing in the Negro Leagues.
It's interesting.
Yep, and he did face black pitching. In fact, Satchel Paige, he got it in the park home run, and Satchel Paige picked up the ball and sent it into to be signed by Babe Ruth. So he did face black pitchers. When they say, no, they couldn't in the regulation league because they weren't allowed to play. But believe me, he was up against plenty of black pitching, and they were tough. But he loved them, and he told Landis they're good. They'd be an asset to the game. Let them in. And Landis, that's another thing Landis held against Babe, because he opened his mouth. He even went. Landis said nobody's going to go when the Mexican team was forming. He said nobody's going to help the Mexican team. Well, see, Babe was out of baseball by then, so he said, "Hell with you," and he helped the Mexican form.
Well, the Afro Americans, the Negro Leaguers, when they were playing, Fleetwood Moses Walker and his brother. Ever hear of them? Okay.
Yeah, the first ones.
Yeah, right. It all started with that game against Cap Anson. Cap Anson said, I'm not taking the field against those.
Blankety blank blank.
Yeah, I can't say the word, but okay. And they played the game anyways. And then after that game, that's when all the Afro-Americans.
The gentleman's agreement was born after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the truth. This gentleman's agreement, you don't play with the blacks. That's when it was born, which was a sad thing, because they're good ball players.
Thank you. Dave Littman.
Dave, you out there?
Dave.
Yeah, I'm here. Cap Anson said that mean word about Moses Fleetwood Walker when the Chicago White Stockings were playing the Newark a Newark team in Newark. So
there you go. Thank you.
So another bad mark against us. First, I want to thank you for joining us. I got to tell you, I took just one look at you, like Linda Ronstadt sang, and I could tell you're your grandfather's granddaughter. which is not a bad person to look like. I mean, you must get double takes in restaurants.
Oh, I actually, if his name comes up, and if it doesn't come up, no. But if the places we dine all the time, I bring my pictures in the back of the car, or I'd have postage up the gazoo. I always carry pictures with me because there's always somebody.
I can't wait. I can't wait to read, your own autobiography and your own stories. You've got to get them published.
Well, hopefully it'll be called Ruthie in Regards.
Great. I'm
A
looking forward.
granddaughter's journey.
Nice.
My question is, I don't know if you ever saw it or not. Actually, I guess it's two parts. I don't know if you ever saw it or not, but did you ever see Max Gale's 3-act one-man play?
Yes,
What did you think
yes.
of it?
He had, he had my mother and I out and Andy to see the show.
And how did you like that and the various other Hollywood impressions of Grandpa that have been done occasionally over the years?
Well, I'm going to tell you the whole story about my mom, and I'll explain why what she said is what she said, because it makes her look terrible if I don't. But you got to figure, people have been coming to us telling us Babe is black. Babe is black. It's like the second question I always get. And the thing is, it's not that I care. I said, hey, everybody wants to own him. But Mom heard that Max Gale said Babe was black. And she said, I've about had enough of this. So it's where her head was. She wasn't prejudiced. It was just where her head was. And she called him up at the Princess Theater. And she says, what if your kids, they told that you were black to your kids? So he goes, well, actually, Mrs. Perrone, I married a black woman. So Mom, without missing a beat, said, well, that's your problem. But my father wasn't black. So actually they had a good rapport when he had us come to the theater, and she actually helped him it was too late because they were closing it, but she told him what his favorite drink was, how he would laugh, how he would stand, which helped him a great deal. He said, I wish I knew you were out there when I was trying to study this, and so that's the story about Max Gale. And there's a lot of impersonations of Babe, and guys don't even study. If they look like them, they just do things, and I have a problem with that, because kids are looking at you as you're the real Babe Ruth. And take some responsibility, learn some stories, learn about Babe, but a lot of them don't. Goodman did the best he could with what he was given. I think he did a nice thing. I also liked the guy, what was his name? He did a made for TV.
I know the film. Pete Rose played Ty Cobb.
Yeah, Lang. Stephen Lang.
You won't find it anywhere because NBC does not have the tape.
Yeah, okay, I'll stop looking for it. Anyway, I met him when he did that, and I said, how did you decide? He said, well, I wasn't going to do it. He said, and I was on a retreat. And he says, and I'm walking through this desolate woods. He said, I tripped over a broken bat. He says, that's why I decided to do it. He tripped over and he figured Babe must want me to do this because he tripped in the middle of nowhere. There was a broken bat. So that's how come he played Babe Ruth. It's kind of cool.
That is cool.
He did a nice job. He did
All right,
a really nice job.
We're going to go to Mars, and then if anybody else has a question who hasn't asked, and then we'll wrap it up. Mars, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Linda, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think the references to Babe being black. I know I read something that Ty Cobb made a racial slur to him, called him the N-word because of his facial features.
And he'd get really dark. He'd get really dark too. If you look at him, he looks it because he got so tanned. He lived outside.
Well, I think he referred to certain facial features, the wide nose, and the lips. And as you know, I found out years later, when the Moors invaded Sicily and they married or raped the Sicilian women, you had those features prevalent in Sicilian men, But actually,
That's why
my
the
main
prejudice
question.
with Northern and Southern. That's where the prejudice between the Northern and Southern started.
Oh yeah, yeah. I did find out more and more about that. But my big question is, and I never really found this out of all the things I read when Babe Ruth came to the Yankees, was I never did find out, wasn't it a multi-trade besides Harry Frazee? I think selling Ruth to the Yankees for $100,000 and part of interest in Fenway Park.
For 3 years.
Wasn't there a multi-trade there? Or who were the players?
Tris went to Detroit. Tris Speaker and Babe were the last two Boston guys. Tris went to Detroit. Babe went to New York.
Well, who else came from the Red Sox to the Yankees in that deal?
I don't know. The deal was what I studied. I didn't study anybody else, but the deal was, Tris and him were the last. And who brokered that was, the Knickerbocker restaurant or bar in New York?
Yes, I remember.
Well, it was talked about before it was even offered. Okay. There was the general manager, what was his name? My mother couldn't stand him. I forgot, but he milked off my grandfather his whole career. And
Fine,
he brokered that before Frazee even knew about it. So it was in the makings, and they were negotiating for a long time about the note from the Fenway. They could take pretty much any player they wanted for that 3 years. And then of course Babe got the big salary for Babe. And it was quite interesting, that little, it wasn't a 1 week, 1 month. That was talked about like the year before it happened. They were already talking about Babe going to New York. So
there wasn't a pitcher from the Red Sox or another good hitter that went from the Red Sox to the Yankees with Babe Ruth?
There might have been. I just don't know about it unless it had to do directly. I don't know about any other players. You know what I mean? In the trade, when I talk about the trade or read about, I'm more centered. I'm sure there probably was. I just don't know who it was.
I thought it was straight sale.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
No, Nanette, I believe they got him some money for that show.
It wasn't No Nanette, because that came out later, but it was a show. It was a show. It was another show. He was bad. I mean, he really was in debt. In fact, if they didn't sell Babe, Red Sox would have went back to the original owner, and there'd probably be no Red Sox.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah, if that didn't take place.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And my husband noticed your Cohiba. He collects cigars.
Oh yeah, this is a Cohiba.
Yeah.
And I know Fidel's favorite cigar.
yeah. Well, it had Connecticut wrapper. Did you know Fidel tried to buy Windsor, where it comes from? And Carter said, we don't sell towns. We can't sell you the town, because he wanted the wrapper. So he just sent somebody who smuggled some wrapper out and seeds, and he grew his own. But he wanted the Connecticut wrapper. Yeah. I only know that because of my husband. I listen.
Linda, we cannot thank you enough for joining us.
Yes,
for an
thank
hour.
you.
It's fabulous. Give it up to Linda Ruth Tosetti
Thank you.
and her wonderful husband over there in the background.
He's a good guy.
He is.
I married the perfect guy to do this. My mother loved my husband because he just embraced everything that we were doing. He's really a cool guy.
The stories are fabulous. When the book comes out, please come back and.
I'll have copies. I'll let you guys know. Definitely. It's if I live through it.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Linda.
Members, remember next week will be no meeting because of the holiday. And thank you so much again. Have a great night. I'll stay in to lock up.
And
Good
thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Linda.
All right,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Linda. Bye now.
Now, Gary and the gang,
Nope.
surprised nobody mentioned that when
Yeah.
Ruth went through the dugout and Feller handed him the bat, Yankee Stadium was kind of built ass backwards until after 1949. The Yankee clubhouse was behind the visiting dugout.
Yeah, it was.
You went to the other side, the visiting clubhouse was behind the home dugout. Just fast forward, this is not a Babe Ruth story. 1949, when Brooklyn came to Yankee Stadium, they walked into the visiting dugout to go to their clubhouse. So probably, I don't think we discussed this with Erskine, but Erskine opens the door. And what does he see? He sees Gehrig and Ruth's locker. That's the first thing he sees. He turns around to his teammates and says, "We lost already. Look what they got in here."
That's a good story. That's funny. And one more thing, you know that jersey he wore on that last day?
Yes.
It is not a regulation Yankee jersey, because people say, why don't you have a lot of jerseys? You had to turn your jersey in. You didn't get to keep your jersey in Babe's time, because they
Babe
passed it
Ruth
down.
couldn't keep his jersey?
Nope,
No.
you had to turn them all. Hey, you think the Yankees would make special for him?
Where
No.
was Chrissy Walsh?
Yeah, really.
No kidding.
Claire did him in, is what she did. But he put her on a budget, and that was the end of that. But
When
anyway,
did she pass away, Claire? When did she die?
1973 or
'Cause
75.
she was at all the old timers games with Gary,
Yeah.
with Eleanor. Right?
Right.
They
Yeah,
were always
I
sitting-
can't go into that either, because I'm on Zoom.
Sure, it'll be in your book.
Yeah, but that is the jersey he wore in Pride of the Yankees, and that's why if you look at it, it photographs so beautiful. It's made for movies, and he after the game, after the game, he relinquished it to somebody from the Hall of Fame, and it went straight to the Hall of Fame after that last appearance. But I found that fascinating when I went to the Hall of Fame, and I thought you guys like to know that.
Wonderful.
So anyway, but thank you for having me.
Thank you so much,
appreciate
Linda.
it.
Be well.
Hey, Linda, what a
You all
treat.
be well. Duck and cover, okay? With
Yes,
this
you
awful
too.
stuff. Okay.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you, Linda.
Did I leave? Yeah, I think I left.